So at this point, it's been a month since the 16-inch MacBook Pro has come out, and this thing, let me tell you, it's fantastic. It's brought a ton of much needed improvements. Better battery, better keyboard, larger display with thinner bezels, better cooling, better graphics, better storage options. It's better in almost every single way than the 15-inch MacBook Pro, the outgoing model, was. But it's got a lot of people talking about what's next. How do we take the improvements and the benefits of this new model and apply that to, let's say, the 13-inch MacBook Pro? Could we see a 14-inch MacBook Pro with the same treatment that we saw here? Let's talk about it. So if you've missed my videos on the 16-inch MacBook Pro, definitely check those out. This device is fantastic. I'm pretty sure I'm safe in saying that this is the first time in 20 years or more that Apple has introduced a model that's thicker than the one it replaces. And also, let's not forget that this is the first time in 7 years that Apple has upgraded the storage options. Ever since the original Retina MacBook Pro came out in June 2012, we've had a base model with 256 gigabytes and the higher tier model with 512. Literally for 7 years that's been the case, and we finally now have 512 and a terabyte. This has been a long time coming, and it's so good to see it finally arrive. So this is basically Apple going, okay, fine, well listen, what do you want? This is just the beginning of a new direction for Apple, and to be honest, we really don't know what's going to happen next. There's no clear roadmap for where we take this very interesting and very unique device. This whole treatment has got a lot of people wondering, okay, what if we applied this whole business to the 13-inch MacBook Pro? What would that look like? Well, let's find out. This is the current base model 13-inch MacBook Pro that I took a look at back in July, and honestly, it's a strong device. Apple finally brought the quad cores down even to the base model 13-inch MacBook Pro, and it makes it a lot more pro than they used to be. These processors can outperform Retina MacBook Pros like the 15-inch ones from even as recently as 2016 and 2017. This thing can beat those in a lot of cases. So it's a very strong contender, but there are the two major issues that these devices have, and that is, of course, the Butterfly keyboard, which is better on the 2019 version. The 2019 Butterfly keyboard fixes a lot of the reliability issues, but it doesn't fix the comfort and key travel issues. And then, of course, there's the 128 gigabyte SSD, which is pretty much laughable. So what if we were to give this device the same treatment the 15-inch got back in November? Well, basically what we would see is, first of all, we got to fit in that new keyboard, which is a must. And that's going to require us to make this device a little bit thicker. And that is also going to allow for better cooling. Not that the cooling was a huge issue on the 13-inch MacBook Pro, but I'm never going to say no to better cooling. We also are going to get a better battery, which, again, not a problem, but who's going to say no to a bigger, better battery? Then we'd also get a larger 14-inch display with thinner bezels, and we'd hopefully get a doubling of the storage. So the base 128 gigabyte model would turn into a 256, and so on. Now, what would that machine look like? Well, considering that the 16-inch MacBook Pro pretty much fits into the same form factor as the old Retinas, it would be a pretty safe bet that this new 14-inch MacBook Pro would be about the same size as this guy, the 2015 Retina MacBook Pro, 13-inch obviously, and that would be fantastic. The bezels need some work. It's definitely looking dated in that respect, but I really would have no problem with a device fitting these dimensions, but with more modern performance. So as great as that would be, I'm a little bit skeptical. There has been some doubt cast as to whether or not Apple's actually going to go through with that. The most cut and dry one is when Jonathan Morrison sat down with Phil Schiller and said, hey, is there going to be a 14-inch MacBook Pro? And Phil Schiller said, no.
No, I wouldn't draw any extrapolation from this to anything else.
And then he kind of pivoted back to the 16 and continued talking about that machine. So that's definitely pouring water on that whole theory. However, let's not forget that even if we don't see a 14-inch MacBook Pro, we gotta see something, right? It's not like this is going to just sit around with a butterfly keyboard and keep getting processor bumps until the end of time. I will be absolutely livid if Apple introduces any MacBook ever again with a butterfly keyboard. No, that ship has sailed, my guy. So if it's not going to be a 14-inch, what's gonna happen? Now, as much as I would love Apple to release a 14-inch MacBook Pro, please do it. Come on. There are still significant things that could be done to the 13 with the same screen size to make this a really, really great device. Now, the most obvious change is, of course, the new scissor switch keyboard. I think that's pretty much a given at this point. And in doing so, in upgrading to this new, better keyboard, it is going to be a little bit thicker than the current 13-inch MacBook Pro. Now, that's a little bit interesting because the current form factor of the 13-inch is really fine. I haven't heard people complaining about the cooling. I haven't heard people complaining that it's too thin to be a Pro device. It's compromising the performance of the notebook. That being said, I don't think people are going to complain if it gets a little bit thicker to accommodate that new keyboard. And let's also not forget that a thicker device also means a bigger battery and better battery life. So I think that would be definitely a fair trade-off. And then aside from that, I think it's a pretty safe bet that we would get a doubling of the storage options. So the base model would have 256 gigs and then 512 and so on. And I think when we combine just those three things, ignoring any performance difference, ignoring any new processors, ignoring a new display, all of that set aside, having this device with this footprint, but a little bit thicker, with much better battery life, a much more reliable keyboard, and more storage as standard, that is a strong device. Granted, it's a modest upgrade, very modest, but I think it would make this a really compelling device. You gotta remember that a lot of the customer base of the 13-inch MacBook Pro literally could not care less what performance this thing packs. They don't even know what a processor is. They don't care what RAM it has. But having a more comfortable, more reliable keyboard, having more battery life, and more storage, everyday users are going to notice and appreciate those gains. So logically, and let's be honest, financially, for Apple, those three improvements make sense. But going beyond that, maybe not so much. And you know, it sucks. I would love to see a 14-inch device with a lot of the same improvements pulled from the 16-inch, maybe even 6-core processors, maybe even dedicated graphics. That would be a fantastic device. Do you know how many people would appreciate a 14-inch MacBook Pro that's still thin and light, but with a good keyboard, good battery life, 6-core processors and dedicated graphics, and 16 gigs of RAM as standard? Oh my gosh. It would sell a ton, but I don't think that's likely. I really wish it were. The 16-inch MacBook Pro was a bit of a unique situation here, I think. We had an unprecedented and a very united demand for change with that model. People really hammering home that they wanted more performance, they wanted better cooling, they wanted a better keyboard, whereas we haven't seen as much of a unified push on the 13-inch. And while Apple has shown that they're willing to listen, they're not necessarily willing to go above and beyond. So the 13-inch, I think, is going to stay 13 inches. I think it's going to get the better keyboard. I think it's going to get a better battery. And I think it's going to get more storage as standard. I think we're going to get a 32 gigabyte of RAM option. But beyond that, I really don't think it's going to be as huge as the 16-inch was. It's unfortunate, but I think that's pretty much the way it's going to go. And I'll be honest, I'm not super bummed about it. I think just those three things are going to make a huge difference, and it's still going to be a strong device, even if it's not as amazing as we all really want it to be. So that's going to do it for this video. Let me know, what are your thoughts on a 13 or 14-inch MacBook Pro? What do you think is next for the smaller Pro MacBook? Let me know down in the comments below. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. Please consider following me on Twitter @LukeMiani, and don't forget to join my subreddit. And with that, I'll see you all in the next video.